Every millisecond, sensitive enterprise data moves across miles of physical infrastructure. Hardware sitting in walls, under streets, and in server racks outside your direct control. The standard operational requirement is straightforward. A client on a local workstation needs to access secured data located on an enterprise file server. In a traditional direct authentication model, the client proves their identity by sending their password, or a hashed version of it, straight across that network path to the destination server. Because that network path spans physical space you don't control, it must be treated as inherently untrusted. Every single packet of data transmitted from point A to point B is theoretically subject to malicious interception. If an attacker intercepts a password hash on an untrusted network, they can launch a replay attack, presenting those exact credentials to the target server to gain access, and then move laterally into other connected systems. When a master secret is required at every destination, the organization creates an unsustainable chain of high-value targets, where a single breach at any endpoint compromises the user's primary identity across the entire network. Solving this requires a structural pivot to a concept called delegated trust. Instead of proving identity to the destination service, the client proves it exactly once to an isolated, centralized authority. In modern enterprise networks, this third-party architecture is implemented through the Kerberos Authentication protocol. To understand exactly how it secures a network, we have to break down its four-step transaction flow. As we map this out, look for the specific mechanism that handles the user's secret, as we determine if it's possible to grant access without the password ever leaving the workstation's local memory. This schematic illustrates the blueprint for that process, physically separating the cryptographic proof of a user's identity from the assertion of their access rights. Looking at the top of the diagram, we start with the first stage of communication between the client workstation and the Key Distribution Center, or KDC. Before this step occurs, the user has already entered their password locally to log into their machine. Their initial identity is established. If the user is already authenticated locally, what data does the workstation actually send to the KDC at point A to request access to a new network resource? The first thing to note is that the client does not resend the user's password over the wire during this request phase. Instead, the client sends a highly specific payload, the Ticket Granting Ticket, or TGT. The TGT functions as a secure proxy. It tells the KDC who the user is, effectively shielding the actual master credentials from network exposure. Once the request hits the Key Distribution Center, the protocol shifts to internal processing. The KDC performs two rapid tasks. First, it cryptographically verifies the validity of the submitted TGT, ensuring the ticket hasn't been forged or tampered with. Second, it queries its internal access control matrix to confirm that this specific user possesses the privileges required for the requested target server. Assuming the privileges are verified, we move to point B. The KDC formulates its response to the client workstation. The KDC generates a brand new, highly specific payload and sends it back, the service ticket. This service ticket has a singular, rigid purpose. It provides cryptographic proof that the subject is authorized to access one designated target object and nothing else. This brings us to the bottom of the diagram, representing the actual connection attempt to the destination service. The client workstation takes that newly acquired service ticket and prepares it for its final transmission across the network. But it doesn't send the ticket alone. The client adds a critical secondary component to the package, an authenticator. The authenticator contains a strict timestamp, an essential security mechanism ensuring that if an attacker copies the service ticket during transit, they cannot reuse it later. The client transmits this combined ticket and authenticator package directly to the target service. Notice the most vital architectural feature here. The destination service receives the data, but it never communicates with the KDC to verify the user. The target service evaluates the mathematical integrity of the cryptographic ticket presented by the client. If the math holds, it grants access locally. Looking at this completed transaction flow, a successful connection was made, yet the master secret was never transmitted. The password was only used locally to decrypt the TGT. Because the service receives only a temporary ticket, attackers cannot move laterally. By replacing permanent secrets with temporary service-specific tokens, Kerberos transforms an untrusted physical network into a secure operational environment. Kerberos manages trust efficiently at the network level, but relies on rigid physical thresholds, required to prove the user's identity in the first place, such as a biometric scan at a high-security building. We evaluate that initial physical proof on this chart, focusing on the crossover error rate, where false acceptances and false rejections intersect. Tuning this curve balances the risk of unauthorized access against the operational gridlock of denying legitimate users. Biometrics govern the rigorous physical threshold of that initial identity proof at the door, ensuring the person logging in is who they claim to be. Enterprise security engineering is ultimately about defining exactly where, how, and for how long trust is granted, whether at the physical biometric scanner or deep inside the key distribution center.